said that looks really good. Load and return GJ, please. Load return.
Nailed it.
Basically three types of fire chemicals. Retardant is the one we use most commonly, most widely used product we have out there. There's also foams and gels.
Working with foam when you're dealing with scooper aircraft, boy, if you can use it, it is so much more effective. I mean, it's like a 70% increase on that water. You'll get the absorption into the fuel and it doesn't just run off. So use it when you can.
Retardant is most commonly used because it has some capabilities that the foams and gels don't have. Because of their chemical makeup, they have salts, usually it's in the form of phosphorus, which actually, once dried on the fuel, they're able to retard the effect of the fire from burning through that fuel in a dry form, where the others, foams and gels, once they're dry, they basically, as if you had water there. There's no retarding ability. So you can use retardant long term. You can go out ahead of the fire, use it maybe to pre-treat a ridge up ahead of the fire, or go indirect on parts of the fire. Retardants changed a lot over the years. Prior to 2005, there were some ingredients in retardant, cyanide being one of them, that made it very harmful if applied in a waterway or to a lot of aquatics, very lethal. The standard and the bar has been raised and raised over the last few years, where we're getting more and more less toxic chemicals there. We don't apply retardant within 300 feet of a waterway. And it doesn't matter if they have aquatic life in them or not, we just assume they do. Just recently, through the Forest Service EIS, they've expanded some of those buffer zones because of concerns about certain species that may be sensitive to fire chemicals. And all these areas are well mapped out. You can find them, each forest has a set of maps for them. There are exceptions to using retardant or fire chemicals in avoidance areas or these buffer zones. The Forest Service has just one exception that they use, that's life and safety. That's pretty broad, but any time that the use of fire chemicals airily can expect to alleviate the concern, they're certainly authorized to be used in that capacity. You know, the question comes up, is retardant or fire chemicals harmful to firefighters? And the short answer is, can be very slightly irritating. Soap and water will take it off your skin, even in your eyes. Just flush it out with water. It's not expected to cause any serious problem. Even inhalation or swallowing of it shouldn't cause you any problems. Don't recommend drinking it, though.
Tactically, when you're using retardant, you need to be thinking about how you want to employ that retardant. Try not to get too fancy with it. It's just like any other line building tool. If you treat it as such, you'll be just fine. Anchor, flank, and pinch is your best tactic. Prior to the drop 2, our interaction with the ground folks is going to be getting a hold of them, going, okay, is that the target you want? Is this what you want to accomplish? And then at that point, before we go live with that run, we're going to actually declare the line. So we want to make sure that everybody's out of the way, that we feel we can do it safely enough. I know you don't want to get too far off, but we need you off enough that we're comfortable that we're not going to, hit you with a massive retardant and roll you down the hill.
You know, retardant weighs about 9 pounds a gallon once you mix it. But what you got to remember is that you load a 2,000-gallon large air tanker with it, you got probably 9 tons worth of weight coming out of that airplane.
We're flying at 150 to 200 feet above the ground. We're flying at 120 knots, which is a very similar airspeed to what the contract carriers provide.
I'm aiming for approximately 100 feet above the canopy. And the reason for that is that we're dropping at about 120 knots, 130 miles an hour type of thing. And so when the doors open, the load is traveling at that speed. And of course it slows down in the airflow. And if the load is still moving forward as it hits the trees, then it's going to get excellent coverage on this side, but there's a shadow here. And of course that can support the fire.
Generally for a grass fuel type, you're looking at a 1 and a 2. You get into the brush, 3 and a 4. 5, 6 as you get up into the timbers, and then as you get into slash, even higher than that. But you got to remember, coverage levels are based on when they went through the models of coverage levels and ranking them out in the fuel types that they were using standard conditions. The business is more Kentucky windage. We try a 2, it doesn't hold, seems to be burning into it too much. Let us know. That's the information that we need back from the ground guys. With the ICS rating system with air tankers, we've got, they type them just like they do anything else. So it starts out with Type 1 air tankers. Type 1 air tankers are anything over 3,000 gallons.
What you're looking at behind us here is one of our two DC-10s that we're quite proud of because of the way they perform. What this brings to the party is capacity, jet speed, and the ability to do a very long line, a very wide line, and we can also segment the drop in as many segments as you would like to have it. The whole deal, despite a few controls, is really this tank system. This is 11,600 gallons. The white doors you'll see on the bottom are identical. Each of those is identical to the door on an Erickson air crane. We're talking about flow rates here that can approach 1,500 gallons a second. There's a perception that because this airplane is so large that it's less mobile, less maneuverable, and less able to deal with gnarly terrain. That perception is not correct. The airplane doesn't know what terrain is under it. If you have an airplane that is significantly under its certified gross weight, which ours is, because we don't have 11 or 12 hours of fuel in it, and we don't have 380 people in it with their baggage going to Hawaii, and we have added a 100,000 pound external, we still come in almost 200,000 pounds lighter than this airplane was certified to fly. That enhances our performance. The DC-10 is crewed by 3 professionals. The pilot or captain in the left forward facing seat, the first officer, who might also be a captain, in the right hand forward facing seat, and the flight engineer. I think there's a couple of things that someone on the ground ought to know. I've not been a firefighter on the ground, but I've been under this airplane on the ground a few times, and there's a little bit of retardant on this hat. I'll guarantee you that when this airplane comes over, as big as it is, and as loud as you may think it is, and as magnificent as it may look, what really matters is what's coming out of those tanks and what is it going to do. And the mission is to get that stuff on the ground in the thickness and in the place that you want it.
In the Type 1 air tanker realm also you have the MAFS aircraft, which are military C-130s. It's a little bit different system because it's a pressurized system, so you're going to see some characteristics with that tanking system that you won't see on anything else. It's going to be a long line, it's going to be a narrow line. The coverage levels are going to be pretty good for you.
The C-130 airframe has been around since the 50s. And it's a Lockheed Martin product, and they've been improving on the model. In fact, they continue to make the airframe. This airplane was manufactured in 1994. In terms of crew, there's the aircraft commander that sits in the left seat, a co-pilot that sits in the right, the flight engineer who sits in this seat here. Behind you is the navigator's position. In the back here, there's 2 seats for 2 loadmasters. What you see, what we're standing in front of, is the aft and the back end of the MAFS system, and it's a roll-on, roll-off system that's designed to be installed in a matter of a few hours in the back of, like I said, any C-130. It's an Aero Union product, and what they did was they built a main tank that holds up to 4,000 gallons of retardant, but for performance and weight issues, we only take it up to 3. Another feature of our system that we have now is the capability of dropping foam. This is our nozzle. The technical term for it is a pintle. All the stuff that was inside, basically the discharge and the pressure, comes right up to the backside of this orange device, this stopper, this pintle device. So when we show up on a fire, our call sign is MAFS, and by the way, that's an acronym for Modular Airborne Firefighting System. So it's MAFS, and then the number that we have on the side of the airplane. So MAFS 5 is the airplane that I'm on.
The most common air tankers that you're probably going to run into just on a day-to-day basis is going to be what we would consider the large air tanker fleet. And most of those are going to be in your Type 2 realm of rankings, and that's going to include the P2V, which is a piston with jet assist aircraft that typically runs 2,200 gallons of retardant. Sometimes you get a little bit of scalloping with them, If you're doing long single door lines, it might not be as consistent as you'll see with a constant flow system. Some of the advantages though of that doored system are is if it's heavy fuel types and you really need to thump it in there, you can open those doors in double door sets that it'll really get a nice wham to the retardant. Also coming into the fleet, we've got the BE-146, which is the 4-engine jet that you'll probably be seeing out there. Big thing to remember with it, it is fast. Also within the Type 2 realm, you're going to find the Canadian air tankers that have been coming down the last few years. The Conair 580 is a beautiful airplane. It does a really nice job in that Type 2 realm. It has a constant flow tank on it. The aircraft is really maneuverable. It's got good speed and makes a beautiful retardant line.
There were about 1,000 Convairs made in San Diego, California in the mid-50s. The first one was converted to an air tanker in the year 2000. The tank that's on the aircraft was built by Aero Union, and it holds 2,100 US gallons. Here's a half the load at coverage level 3. That might be a load for a grass fire. Heavy timber, probably going to drop the whole load at coverage level 6, maybe coverage level 8. And a lightning strike drop, maybe 1/6 at max, and that's kind of a blob.
Some single-engine air tankers fall within that Type 3 classification also, and then the reason they do is because they're right at 800 gallons of retardant and they have an approved tank. So you will also see them ranked in there. Now the same aircraft may be ranked in a Type 4 classification. Then we got the Fireboss, which is typically a single-engine air tanker on floats. That one's usually carrying about 600 gallons just because of the weight of the floats. Tactically, when you're working with seats, a couple things to keep in mind. Always order more than you think you need. Their operational feasibility is really kind of revolves around the 70-mile dispatch. So you need to set them up as close as you can and get as quick a turnarounds as you can. Also within the Type 3 realm, we've got the S2 turbines that you will see out of California. Does a really nice job since they've converted. Constant flow tank. They're very maneuverable. They do a really nice job, but you'll usually see them in California or bordering states of California. I treat a scooper maybe even more like a helicopter than I do an air tanker. The best thing you can do with those guys, if they got a water source really close, is not mess with them. You give them a target and a ground contact and you just let them go to work.